Lee Minho stood at the viewing window of the transport ship, watching as the Galactic Medical Academy came into view. The space station looked like a giant white snowflake, with 6 long arms stretching out from its central hub. Each arm held different departments and living quarters for the thousands of students who came from across the galaxy to study medicine. Minho checked his reflection in the window. His blue medical trainee uniform was neat and clean, but he couldn't help feeling nervous. He would be the first human from Earth to study at the academy. The information packet had mentioned that there was another human student from Mars, but that wasn't quite the same. Mars colonists had lived in space for generations. "Attention passengers," the ship's AI announced. "Please prepare for docking at GMA-7 station. Ensure all personal items are secured." Minho grabbed his bag and headed to the exit. His heart beat faster as he thought about the 3 years ahead of him. Back on Earth, his family had been so proud when he got accepted. "Show them what humans can do," his mother had said. But Minho knew it wouldn't be easy. Most alien species saw humans as dangerous Deathworlders because Earth had such harsh conditions compared to their home planets. The docking process was smooth, and soon Minho was walking through the station's bright white corridors. The air had a clean, filtered smell, and the artificial gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's. Around him, beings of all shapes and sizes moved about their business. A group of floating jellyfish-like creatures drifted past, their tentacles glowing with soft blue light. A tall alien that looked like a walking crystal nodded politely as it stepped around him. Following the directions on his tablet, Minho found his way to the student orientation hall. The room was already half full of new students. Some sat in standard chairs, while others rested in pools of liquid or hovered in anti-gravity fields. Minho chose a seat near the back, trying not to draw attention to himself. "Is this seat taken?" a friendly voice asked in Korean. Minho looked up to see a young woman in a red Mars colony uniform. She had a warm smile and carried a medical kit similar to his own. "No, please sit down," he replied in Korean, grateful to hear a familiar language. "I'm Bora Kim, 3rd-generation Mars colonist," she said, settling into the chair. "You must be the Earth student everyone's talking about." "Everyone's talking about me?" Minho asked, his nervousness returning. Bora laughed softly. "Well, it's not every day we get a pure Earther at the Academy. Most species think your planet is too dangerous to even visit. They call it a death world because of all the natural disasters, extreme weather, and high gravity." Before Minho could respond, a tall jellyfish-like being floated to the front of the room. Unlike the ones Minho had seen earlier, this one had tentacles that shimmered with multiple colors. It was Professor Axnen, according to the nameplate that hovered beside it. "Welcome, new students," the professor's voice resonated in their minds through the station's translation system. "You represent the finest medical talents from 50 different species and 27 different worlds. Here at the Galactic Medical Academy, you will learn to heal beings very different from yourselves." The professor's tentacles created beautiful patterns as it spoke. "You have been divided into small study groups to encourage close cooperation. Please check your tablets for your assignments." Minho tapped his screen and saw his group listing. Lee Minho, Human, Earth. Bora Kim, Human, Mars Colony. Telexi, Lumini, Floating Spheres. Kaz Dur, Crystal Collective. Diamond Core. Chlor, Photosynthetic. Green Haven. "Look at that," Bora whispered, showing him her matching screen. "We're in the same group." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chiming sound. A jellyfish-like being, smaller than the professor, drifted over to their seats. Its tentacles glowed with nervous energy. "Greetings. I am Telexi," it communicated. "Are you the Earth human and Mars human of our study group?" "Yes, I'm Minho. And this is Bora," Minho replied, trying to sound confident. 2 more figures approached, a crystalline being that sparkled under the room's lights, and a tall plant-like creature with green bark-like skin and leaves that rustled softly. "I am Kazdur," the crystal being said, its voice sounding like wind chimes. "This is Chlor," it added, gesturing to the plant being, who bowed its leaf-covered head in greeting. Professor Axnen's voice filled their minds again. "Your first assignment as a group will be a semester-long project on emergency medical responses. Each of you will demonstrate your species' approach to critical care. This will help us develop better universal treatment protocols." Telexi's tentacles twisted in what Minho guessed was excitement. "Our methods are very advanced. We heal through energy transfer and psychological harmony. Crystal collective medicine uses resonance and structural realignment," Kazdur added, its facets gleaming proudly. "Photosynthetic healing draws from the universal life force," Chlor said in a whispered voice that reminded Minho of leaves in the wind. Bora smiled diplomatically. "Mars colony medicine combines Earth techniques with space-adapted procedures." All eyes turned to Minho, waiting to hear about Earth's medical practices. He thought about the emergency first aid kit in his bag, filled with what aliens might consider primitive tools: bandages, tourniquets, emergency splints, and wound sealants. "Earth medicine is very practical," he said carefully. "We focus on keeping people alive in challenging conditions." Telexi's glow dimmed slightly. "We have read about Earth's aggressive survival methods. They seem quite intense." "Intensity is sometimes necessary for survival," Minho replied quietly, remembering his emergency response training back on Earth. He had a feeling his alien classmates weren't ready to learn about CPR or emergency tourniquets just yet. Professor Axnen floated to their group. "You have an interesting mix of backgrounds here. I look forward to seeing how you combine your different approaches to healing. Remember, the best medical practitioners keep an open mind." As the orientation continued, Minho found himself relaxing slightly. Yes, his alien classmates seemed wary of him, but they were all here to learn. And maybe, just maybe, they would come to understand that what they saw as human aggression was actually a deep commitment to preserving life, no matter how difficult the circumstances. Little did any of them know that they would soon get a very practical demonstration of Earth's emergency medical techniques, and it would change their understanding forever. The rest of the orientation passed with discussions of class schedules, station protocols, and safety procedures. Minho paid careful attention to the emergency protocols, noting how they differed from Earth standards. The station's artificial gravity could fail, atmosphere could leak, or radiation shields could weaken. It was the kind of environment where things could go wrong quickly, and as a human from a high-gravity world, he might be better equipped to help in some emergencies. As they left the orientation hall, Bora fell into step beside him. "Don't worry too much about their reactions," she said quietly. "Mars colonists used to get the same treatment. They'll learn that being from a death world just means we're better prepared for emergencies." Minho nodded, appreciating her support. Together, they followed their alien classmates toward their first class, ready to begin their journey into galactic medicine. The station's huge windows showed the star-filled space beyond, and Minho felt a mix of excitement and determination. He would show them that human medical techniques, while sometimes appearing harsh, came from a place of deep caring and an unwavering commitment to saving lives. What he didn't know was that his chance to prove this would come much sooner than anyone expected. 2 weeks had passed since orientation at the Galactic Medical Academy. Lee Minho was starting to find his way around the massive space station, though he still got lost sometimes in the twisting corridors. His study group met every day in Lab 7, where they learned about different species' medical techniques. Today, they were watching Telexi demonstrate healing through energy transfer. The jellyfish-like being's tentacles glowed with soft blue light as they touched a damaged plant cell from Chlor's leaf. "See how the energy flows," Telexi explained, their voice gentle in everyone's minds. "No need for cutting or harsh chemicals, just peaceful energy transfer." Minho nodded politely, though he couldn't help thinking how this method wouldn't help much if someone was bleeding heavily. Next to him, Bora Kim took careful notes on her tablet. She had become a good friend, helping him understand the differences between Earth and space-adapted medicine. Very elegant, Professor Axnen said, floating near their workstation. Tomorrow, we will observe Kazdur's crystal healing techniques. Then next week, our Earth student will demonstrate his methods. The professor's tentacles flickered with what might have been concern, though perhaps we should prepare the more sensitive students for Earth's direct approach to medical care. Minho tried not to sigh. He was tired of everyone treating Earth medicine like it was somehow barbaric. Yes, they used needles and stitches sometimes, but only because they worked. After class, Bora suggested they visit the station's agricultural sector. "I need to check on my research project," she said. "I'm studying how different gravity levels affect plant growth. Want to come along?" "Sure," Minho agreed. He enjoyed spending time with Bora. She understood Earth ways better than their alien classmates, and she didn't flinch when he talked about setting broken bones. The agricultural sector was in one of the station's outer arms. It was filled with huge greenhouses, each one containing plants from different worlds. The air here smelled like soil and growing things, reminding Minho of Earth's gardens. "My test plants are in Greenhouse 12, Bora explained as they walked. "It's one of the variable pressure chambers. We can adjust the gravity and atmosphere to match different planets." They passed through several airlocks, following safety protocols carefully. In space, even small mistakes could be dangerous. Minho noticed that some of the pressure gauges were showing slightly unusual readings, but they were still within the safe range. Bora's research station was near the back of the greenhouse. She began checking her plants while Minho looked around. The chamber was fascinating, with plants floating in anti-gravity zones and others growing in high-gravity beds. That's when he heard it, a high-pitched whine that didn't belong there. His Earth survival training kicked in immediately. "Bora, something's wrong with the pressure system," he said sharply. "We need tow." The warning came too late. There was a loud crack, and suddenly warning lights were flashing everywhere. One of the pressure regulation pipes had burst, sending metal debris flying through the air. The room's pressure began to drop rapidly. Minho reacted instantly, grabbing a support pole as the air started to rush out of the chamber. But Bora wasn't as lucky. The sudden pressure change caught her off guard, and a piece of flying debris hit her hard. She fell, blood floating in the low gravity, her face already showing signs of decompression exposure. The emergency containment field activated, stopping the major pressure loss, but the damage was done. Bora lay unconscious, bleeding from several wounds. Their alien classmates, who had been working in a nearby greenhouse, came running in through the emergency airlock. "Someone call medical help." Kazdur's crystal voice chimed in panic. "We must establish psychological harmony first," Telexi insisted, tentacles flashing with distress. "The life force is disturbed. We need to rebalance her energy," Chlor whispered. But Minho wasn't listening to any of them. He was already moving, his Earth first aid training taking over. He pulled off his outer shirt, quickly tearing it into strips. The aliens watched in horror as he firmly pressed the fabric against Bora's worst wound, applying direct pressure to stop the bleeding. "Telexi, help me here," he ordered. "Use your tentacles to hold this bandage in place." The jellyfish-like being drifted backward. But such physical contact. It's so invasive. "She's bleeding out," Minho said firmly. "Hold the bandage." Something in his voice made Telexi obey, though their tentacles trembled as they touched the makeshift bandage. "Kazdur, we need to check for internal injuries. Your crystal resonance. Can you use it to scan her chest and head?" The crystal being's facets sparkled with uncertainty, but they moved forward to help. Minho checked Bora's breathing. It was shallow but present. Her pulse was rapid, typical of decompression exposure. He quickly assessed her other injuries, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. "Chlor, she's going into shock. Can your photosynthetic abilities help warm her?" The plant being rustled forward, leaves extending to provide gentle warmth. When Bora's breathing suddenly became more labored, Minho didn't hesitate. He tilted her head back to clear her airway, then began chest compressions when she stopped breathing entirely. "You'll break her," Kaz-Dur chimed in alarm. "Better broken ribs than dead," Minho replied, continuing the compressions with textbook precision. "This is how we keep blood flowing to the brain." His alien classmates watched in a mix of horror and fascination as he performed CPR. To them, it looked incredibly violent, pushing down on her chest, breathing into her mouth. But they couldn't deny that it was working. Color was returning to Bora's face. The station's medical team arrived just as Bora started breathing on her own again. Professor Axnen came with them, all their tentacles glowing with concern. As the professional medical staff took over, using their advanced equipment to stabilize Bora, the professor turned to the study group. "I saw everything through the security feeds," they said. "Most illuminating." Minho stood up, his hands stained with Bora's blood, his shirt in torn strips. He knew he must look like their worst fears about violent humans come true. But Professor Axnen's tentacles were glowing with what seemed to be approval. "You may have just taught us all something important about emergency care, Earth student." Telexi's tentacles twisted thoughtfully. "The bleeding stopped when we applied pressure. So simple, yet so effective." "And a heart compression technique," Kaz-Dur chimed, "crude but powerful." "The coordination of different methods," Clor whispered, each contributing to saving life. As they watched the medical team take Bora away for treatment, Minho could see his classmates looking at him differently. Maybe now they would understand that sometimes saving a life required direct action. Earth's medical techniques might seem rough, but they were born from necessity and a deep commitment to preserving life at all costs. "Tomorrow," Professor Axnen announced, "I think we should revise our lesson plan. Lee Minho, would you be willing to teach your classmates some basic Earth first aid techniques?" Minho looked at his alien classmates, who now seemed more curious than afraid. "Yes," he said. "I think that would be a good idea." The professor's tentacles created a pattern that looked almost like a smile. Sometimes the best lessons came from real emergencies, even if they weren't in the original curriculum. The medical bay of the Galactic Medical Academy looked very different from Earth hospitals. Instead of white walls, it had soft, glowing surfaces that changed color to help patients heal. Bora Kim lay in a recovery pod, surrounded by gentle lights and healing mists. She had been there for 3 days since the accident in the greenhouse. Lee Minho sat beside her pod, checking her vital signs on the medical display. The doctors had said she would make a full recovery, thanks to the quick first aid she had received. Her broken ribs from the CPR were already healing with the help of advanced alien medical technology. "You know," Bora said, her voice stronger than the day before, "on Mars, we learned about Earth's emergency methods. But I never thought I'd need them. I'm glad you remembered your training." Before Minho could reply, their alien classmates entered the medical bay. Telexi floated in first, their tentacles glowing with soft colors that Minho had learned meant they were feeling nervous but determined. Kaz-Dur's crystal form sparkled under the medical bay lights, and Clor's leaves rustled quietly as they approached. "We have been thinking," Telexi said, their mental voice careful and measured. "Perhaps we were wrong to judge Earth medical techniques so quickly. Would you teach us?" Minho looked at his classmates in surprise. "You want to learn Earth first aid? The accident showed us something important." Kaz-Dur chimed, their crystal facets shifting to show sincerity. "Our traditional methods are beautiful and effective for planned healing, but sometimes life needs faster, more direct action. Like a plant turning toward sunlight," Clor whispered, "we must adapt to survive." Professor Axnen drifted into the room, their tentacles creating patterns of approval. "This is exactly the kind of understanding we hope to develop at the Academy. Different approaches to healing can work together." The professor had set up a special teaching area in one of the medical labs. There were practice dummies made to simulate different species, first aid supplies from Earth, and monitoring equipment to record their learning sessions. First, Minho began, holding up a simple pressure bandage. We need to understand why Earth developed these techniques. Our planet has high gravity, which means falls are dangerous. We have large oceans, thick atmospheres, and extreme weather. We had to learn how to keep people alive in harsh conditions. His classmates listened carefully as he explained the basics of human first aid. Telexi's tentacles twitched when Minho demonstrated how to check for a pulse, but they bravely practiced the technique. You see, Minho explained, when we touch someone to check their pulse or apply pressure to a wound, it's not about being aggressive. It's about connecting with the patient, understanding their needs quickly. Kazdur studied the CPR dummy with their crystal sensors. The force needed for chest compressions. It's precisely calculated, isn't it? Not random violence at all. Exactly, Minho said. Every press has to be the right depth and speed. It's about keeping blood flowing to the brain when the heart stops. Even Telexi, who had been most disturbed by physical contact, began to understand. They used their tentacles to practice applying pressure bandages, their natural ability to sense energy helping them find the right amount of force. In our culture, Telexi explained, we believe healing should be gentle, like the flow of light through water. But I see now that sometimes the body needs stronger help, like a current pushing a drowning swimmer to shore. Clore had an interesting perspective to add. Plants must be robust to survive storms. They bend, but do not break. Perhaps human medicine is like this, strong enough to handle emergency conditions. As they practiced, Bora watched from her recovery pod, adding helpful comments about how Mars colony had adapted Earth techniques for space conditions. We learned to combine the best of both worlds, she said, Earth's practical methods with space medicine's advanced technology. Professor Axnen observed their practice sessions with growing interest. The professor's tentacles created complex patterns as they took notes. This is fascinating, they said. Earth's emergency techniques could be very valuable for our space stations. In zero gravity, in pressure loss situations, quick action can make the difference between life and death. The aliens practiced with growing confidence. Telexi learned to wrap bandages using their tentacles, finding that their natural sensitivity to energy helped them apply just the right pressure. Kazdur discovered that their crystalline form could be used to splint injuries effectively. Clore's natural ability to sense life force helped them quickly check vital signs. But what about the psychological impact? Telexi asked one day. On my world, we believe healing must consider the mind as well as the body. That's a good point, Minho said. On Earth, we have something called bedside manner. Even in emergencies, we talk to patients, explain what we're doing, try to keep them calm. The physical treatment is just part of the care. They practiced scenarios where they had to both treat injuries and comfort patients. Telexi was surprisingly good at this, using their ability to project calming thoughts while applying first aid. Kazdur learned to modulate their crystal chimes to soothing frequencies while working, and Clore's natural peaceful presence helped keep practice sessions calm. One day, Professor Axnen brought in a special guest, the station's chief medical officer. The officer watched them practice, their many eyes blinking with interest. I've reviewed the security footage from the greenhouse incident, the officer said, and I've been watching your practice sessions. I believe we should incorporate Earth first aid training into our standard emergency protocols. Minho felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for his homeworld's medical tradition. Earth's methods might seem rough to other species, but they worked. They saved lives. There's something beautiful about it, actually, Telexi said, their tentacles glowing with new understanding. The way humans fight so hard to preserve life, using whatever tools they have, it's not barbaric at all. It's dedicated. Like a crystal forming under pressure, Kazdur chimed in. The conditions may be harsh, but the result is strong and clear. As they continued their practice, Minho realized something important was happening. His alien classmates weren't just learning Earth first aid techniques. They were beginning to understand humans better. Every bandage they wrapped, every pulse they checked, helped them see that what they had thought was human aggression was actually intense care and commitment to life. Bora, now strong enough to sit up in her pod, watched their practice with a smile. "See," she said to Minho, "sometimes it takes a crisis to bring understanding. Though maybe next time we could learn without me getting hurt." Everyone laughed at that, even Telexi, whose tentacles created patterns that looked like falling stars when they were amused. The sound of their different types of laughter, human chuckles, crystal chimes, rustling leaves, and glowing tentacles, filled the medical bay with harmony. A month had passed since the greenhouse accident. The Galactic Medical Academy's examination hall looked different today. Instead of neat rows of desks, the room had been transformed into a series of emergency simulation zones. Each zone presented a different medical challenge that the students would have to face. Lee Minho stood with his study group, watching as Professor Axnen explained the final test. Beside him, Bora Kim had fully recovered and was ready to participate. Their alien classmates, Telexi, Kazdur, and Chlor, listened carefully to the instructions. "Today's examination will test how well you have learned to combine different medical approaches," Professor Axnen's mental voice explained. "You will face 4 emergency scenarios. Each one will require you to work together and use both traditional and Earth-style first aid techniques." The professor's tentacles created patterns of encouragement. "Remember, in real emergencies, we must use whatever methods work best to save lives." The first scenario involved a pressure leak similar to the greenhouse accident. This time, when the warning lights flashed, everyone knew what to do. Telexi used their tentacles to quickly seal small leaks while Minho and Bora helped the practice dummy victim. They worked together smoothly, Minho applying pressure bandages while Telexi used their energy-sensing abilities to check for internal injuries. "Good coordination," Professor Axnen noted. "You've learned to combine physical treatment with energy assessment." The second scenario presented them with a case of crystal fracture, a serious condition for crystalline beings like Kazdur. In the past, they would have only used traditional crystal healing methods, but now they knew better. "The fracture is too deep for resonance healing alone," Kazdur chimed. "We need to stabilize it first." Minho helped apply a special splint while Kazdur used their crystal healing. Chlor provided support by using photosynthetic energy to speed up the healing process. It was a perfect blend of Earth practical methods and alien healing arts. The third challenge tested their response to multiple casualties. 3 practice dummies represented different species, each needing different types of care. The team split up but stayed connected, sharing their skills. "Vital signs dropping in the plant-based victim," Chlor whispered urgently. "Starting chest compressions," Minho called out, remembering to adjust the pressure for the different body type. Telexi moved between patients, their tentacles glowing as they combined energy healing with pressure point techniques they had learned from Earth medicine. Bora coordinated their efforts, using her knowledge of both Earth and space medicine to guide their decisions. The final scenario was the hardest. They had to treat a victim suffering from both physical trauma and energy disruption, something that required both human and alien healing methods working together. "Remember what we learned," Minho said to his team. "Every technique has its place." They moved like a well-practiced dance. Minho and Bora handled the immediate physical injuries, while Telexi balanced the patient's energy fields. Kazdur used crystal resonance to diagnose internal problems, and Chlor provided healing energy through their leaves. Professor Axnen's tentacles created patterns of approval as they worked. Other teachers gathered to watch, their various appendages and sensing organs showing interest in this new combined approach to emergency medicine. When they finished the final scenario, the examination hall fell quiet. Professor Axnen floated forward to address all the students. "What we have witnessed today goes beyond passing a test," they said. "You have shown us the future of galactic medicine." The professor's tentacles glowed brightly. When Lee Minho first arrived, many thought Earth's medical techniques were too aggressive. The greenhouse accident showed us that sometimes direct action is necessary. But what you have demonstrated today is even more important. You have shown how different approaches can work together. The chief medical officer stepped forward. Based on what we have seen, the Academy will be introducing a new course next semester, Combined Emergency Response Techniques. We want all our students to learn this balanced approach to healing. Minho felt proud, not just of himself but of his whole team. They had taken the best parts of each world's healing arts and created something new. You know, Telexi said, their tentacles creating patterns of thoughtfulness. On my world, we have a saying, light takes many paths to reach its destination. I think healing is the same way. Sometimes it needs to be gentle, sometimes firm, but always caring. Kazder's crystal form sparkled with agreement. And like a crystal with many facets, each approach reflects a different aspect of healing. Life finds its way, Chlor whispered, leaves rustling softly. Like plants growing through cracks in rock, healing must sometimes be gentle, sometimes strong. Bora smiled at their poetic descriptions. On Mars, we say adapt or die. But maybe it's better to say adapt and help others live. After the examination, they gathered in the medical bay where Bora had recovered. The room looked different now. Earth-style first aid kits hung on the walls next to alien healing devices. It was a visible sign of how things had changed. When I first came here, Minho said to his friends, I worried that everyone would think humans were too aggressive, too primitive. But you learned to see past that. And we helped you see that gentleness has its place too. Telexi replied, their glow warm and friendly. Now we understand. It's not about which way is better. It's about knowing when to use each method. Professor Axnen found them there, their tentacles creating patterns that looked almost like a human smile. Your group has started something important, they said. Already, other medical schools are asking about our new Combined Techniques program. The professor's glow brightened. Sometimes the best teachers are those who come to learn. You came to study galactic medicine, Lee Minho, but you ended up teaching us all something valuable about healing and about judging too quickly. As they sat together in the medical bay, Minho looked at his strange but wonderful group of friends, a jellyfish-like being who had overcome their fear of physical contact, a crystal person who had learned to value quick action, a plant being who understood the need for strength, a Mars colonist who helped bridge their different worlds. Together, they had proved that what some called aggressive could actually be caring, what seemed primitive could be practical, and what looked like weakness could be strength. They had learned that true healing comes in many forms, and the best healers keep their minds open to all of them. So, Bora said with a grin, what should we study next semester? Their different kinds of laughter filled the medical bay once again, a harmony of human chuckles, crystal chimes, glowing tentacles and rustling leaves. It was the sound of barriers breaking down, of understanding growing, of healing happening in more ways than one.